A waitress with scars is mocked. Next morning, Marines line up to thank her. What happened to your face? You burn yourself flipping pancakes or what? The voice, laced with mockery and amusement, cut through the mid-morning lull at Rosie's diner like a blade slicing through warm butter. It came from Table 5, the booth near the window where a trio of young men sat, smirking over half-empty coffee mugs and greasy plates. Maria Torres froze. The coffee pot in her hand, freshly filled, trembled slightly, though her grip stayed firm. She didn't turn immediately. She didn't have to. The voice belonged to the loud one, the one with electric blue hair, a chain around his neck, and the kind of smile that told you he'd never done a kind thing without expecting applause for it. The booth burst into snickering. Maria turned, expression carefully neutral. Her brown eyes, often warm and calm, had turned to glass. The scar on her left cheek, still faintly pink despite the years, caught the diner's overhead lights. It extended from her cheekbone down to her neck, disappearing beneath the collar of her pressed uniform shirt. She walked calmly to the table, pen and notepad in hand. "Is everything all right here, gentlemen?" "Oh, we're peachy," said the blue-haired one. He leaned back, nudging his friend with his elbow, just admiring the ambience. Real war zone chic. More laughter, more eyes turning toward them. A few customers looked away quickly, embarrassed for Maria. Harold, a silver-haired man in a faded army cap who sat daily at the counter, clenched his coffee cup so hard his knuckles whitened. He opened his mouth, but Maria caught his eye and gave him the faintest shake of her head. "Please, let go." She took a deep breath and said, "Let me know if you need anything else." She turned and walked away, the coffee pot still warm in her hand, her back straight, her breath shallow. She didn't let them see the way her left hand trembled when she placed the pot back at the beverage station. She didn't let them see the tears that pooled but did not fall. Maria had long grown used to whispers, to sideways glances, to parents who pulled children closer as she approached. The scars told a story most were too afraid to ask about. A story she carried in her skin. Rosie's Diner was a slice of Americana tucked into a quiet street in Rochester, Minnesota. With its checkered linoleum floors, red vinyl booths, and the constant murmur of a ceiling fan overhead, it was the kind of place that had stayed the same for decades. The only thing newer than the coffee machine was Maria. Maria had been working here for nearly 5 years, ever since she returned from her final deployment. She took the early shift most days, arriving before sunrise to prep tables, slice lemons, and refill condiments. Most mornings passed uneventfully. Regulars knew her name. Some asked how she was holding up. Most respected her space. But every now and then, newcomers came in, and some of them had never been taught what respect looks like. Maria was 34. Before the war, she had been a nursing student with a soft spot for old dogs and children. After the war, she was a former Marine combat medic with more courage than anyone gave her credit for, and more pain than anyone could guess. In Fallujah, during her second tour, she had been in a convoy ambushed by insurgents. An IED tore through the vehicle she rode in, setting off a chain of chaos and fire. Maria dragged 3 injured Marines from the burning wreckage. She didn't stop until the last of them was safe. When the dust settled, her face and neck bore the price of heroism. Shrapnel, fire, and trauma left their mark. She was decorated for bravery. A Purple Heart, a Navy Commendation Medal. But the medals didn't protect her from looks in grocery store aisles or comments from customers who didn't know any better, or worse, did and didn't care. That night, after her shift ended, Maria tucked her apron into her locker, changed into a hoodie and jeans, and stepped out into the chilly spring air. It was raining just barely, a light drizzle that made everything slick and gray. The streets glistened under the lamplight. She wrapped her arms around herself and took the alley route home, same as always. Her apartment was only 5 blocks away, and the alley shaved off 3 minutes. It was usually quiet, lined with dumpsters and back doors and the occasional stray cat. But tonight, as her sneakers splashed through shallow puddles, she felt a prickling unease. Footsteps echoed behind her. Not hurried, not casual, Intentional. She glanced over her shoulder. 3 shadows. Male voices. Laughter. Her stomach dropped. Hey, Scarface. Where you running off to? She turned. The same boys from earlier. The one with the blue hair stumbled a little as he stepped forward, clearly buzzed. You think you're better than us, huh? Too good to take a joke. Maria didn't answer. She backed up a step, her heart pounding. You didn't like our jokes, the second boy said, slurring slightly. Maybe we oughta give you some new ones. The third reached out suddenly and shoved her. She stumbled back against a dumpster, gasping. Leave me alone, she hissed. They laughed. One reached for her hoodie, yanking it back. Another tried to grab her wrist. She twisted away, but not fast enough. A sharp cry escaped her as she fell, landing hard on her knees. Pain shot through her hip. Her tote bag hit the ground, its contents spilling. Notebook half a sandwich, a folded photo of her unit. Come on, one of them jeered. Thought you were tough. Marine and all. Before she could scream, headlights swept across the alley. Tires screeched. A truck door slammed. Boots pounded pavement. Back the hell off her. The voice was thunder. From a truck stepped a tall man in a green jacket, his shaved head slick with rain. John Hawkins, former gunnery sergeant, Bravo 17. He moved like a freight train, hands clenched, jaw set. The boys turned. The blue-haired one raised his hands. Hey man, we were just... Hawk didn't let him finish. In 2 strides, he had the kid by the collar, slammed him against the brick wall. You think it's funny to hurt someone? To corner a woman? Clara Evans appeared behind him, umbrella in one hand, phone in the other. She was already dialing 911. Marcus Lee stepped out of the passenger side, eyes locked on Maria, who was slowly getting to her feet. Maria, Marcus said gently, rushing to her side. Are you okay? She nodded, breath coming in short gasps. I'm fine. Just bruised. I've got them on the line, Clara said. They're sending a unit. The boys didn't resist after that. Not when they saw Hawk's fists. Not when Clara snapped a photo of their faces. Not when Marcus stood by Maria, hand on her shoulder. By the time the squad car arrived, they were soaked and silent. The officers took statements. The boys were cuffed, grumbling but too ashamed to speak. Maria declined medical help. I just want to go home, she whispered. Hawk drove her. In the quiet hum of the truck, he finally spoke. I saw the post Harold made, he said, about what they said to you. And when you didn't answer his texts, I figure I should check in. She nodded. I didn't want anyone to fuss. He glanced at her, eyes hard. It's not fuss, Maria. You saved my damn life in Fallujah. You think we wouldn't have your back now? Silence stretched. She stared out the window, rain streaking past. I didn't think anyone would care. Hawk pulled up to her building. Put the truck in park. We all care. You hear me? Every last one of us. And tomorrow, you'll see just how many. Maria didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was too tight with tears. She didn't want to cry. But in her chest, something warm flickered. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. By 5:30 a.m., the streets of Rochester were still quiet, slick from the previous night's rain. The sky held the deep indigo of dawn not yet broken. A few delivery trucks rumbled in the distance. Most of the town still slept. But in front of Rosie's diner, a line was already forming. At first, it was just one man, Hawk, standing in his green military-issue field jacket, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the diner's door. He looked like a sentinel guarding sacred ground. Next to him stood Clara Evans, her red Bravo 17 jacket zipped to her chin, holding 2 cups of coffee she'd picked up from a place down the street. One she handed to Hawk without a word. Then came Marcus. Then 3 more men Maria hadn't seen in years. They came in 1s and 2s, boots thudding on wet concrete, their posture straight, expressions unreadable. Some were in uniform. Others wore jackets with old patches and faded insignias. But all bore the same look, a quiet, fierce determination. By 5:50 a.m., there were 18. By 6 a.m., there were 23. Inside Rosie's, Maria was already in motion. Bruised ribs slowed her slightly, but she masked it well. Her routine, was muscle memory. Start the coffee, flip the chairs down from the tables, unlock the register, check the syrup levels. She hadn't told anyone at the diner what had happened. She didn't want the pity, didn't want the questions, just wanted to work. But as she went to flip the sign on the door from closed to open, she froze. They were there, 23 Marines, now standing at attention. She blinked. The cold glass of the door pressed lightly against her fingertips. Harold was there, too, standing off to the side in his army vet cap, a cane in one hand. He gave her a small, firm nod. Maria unlocked the door. It creaked open. No one rushed in. Instead, Hawk stepped forward. "Permission to enter and be served breakfast by a hero," he said, voice steady. Maria opened her mouth, but the words got stuck. Clara stepped beside her. "Let us in, Torres. We're hungry, and you make the best coffee west of the Mississippi." The dam broke. Maria smiled, shaky, real, overwhelmed. She stepped aside. "Get in here," she said softly. They filled the diner slowly, respectfully. No hostling. No chaos. They took their seats at the booths and counters, some sliding into places they'd once occupied years ago. Others took new seats, but all placed the same thing on the table before them. A small card with the words, "Thank you, Torres." Rosie's Diner had never seen anything like it. Hawk took a seat at the counter. When Maria came to pour his coffee, his eyes scanned her face. "You okay?" "I am now," she whispered. Clara took over the register for Maria, refusing to let her argue. Marcus helped bus tables. More customers trickled in, early risers, unaware at first of what they were stepping into. A woman in scrubs gasped. A man with a newspaper paused in the doorway, then took a seat beside a Marine without saying a word. Word traveled fast. By 7:30, the diner was full. By 8 o'clock, local press showed up. Someone had tagged a photo of the Marines in line on social media. A caption read, "Not all heroes wear aprons, but some do." A reporter asked Maria if she would speak. She said no. Then Clara stood. "I will," she said. The room fell quiet. Clara faced the camera, her voice strong. "Maria Torres is a hero. She was a field medic with Bravo 17. In Fallujah, she ran in a fire to pull out wounded men. She stayed behind when ordered to evacuate so she could keep treating casualties. She got hit saving others. She wears those scars because she earned them. And last night, she was attacked for them. She didn't deserve that. We came today to remind her, and anyone else who forgets, what she means to us." The room broke into applause. Hawk raised his cup. "To Torres. To Torres," echoed around the room like a vow. Outside, the video went viral. Within hours, Rosie's Diner trended online. People across the country posted messages of support. Former Marines from other units shared photos of themselves with field medics. One wrote, "I owe my life to someone like Torres. Respect." By noon, Maria had to step away to breathe. She found a break room, leaned against the counter, heart racing. Clara followed. "You all right?" Maria nodded. "It's just a lot." "It is," Clara agreed. "But you're not alone anymore." Maria looked down at her hands. "I didn't want to make it about me." "It's not. It's about what you represent. We all carry something. Yours just happens to show." Maria exhaled. Slow, steady. Outside, the day continued. But something had shifted. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a symbol. And for the first time in years, Maria didn't feel ashamed of the scars. She felt proud. The dawn sky broke in a wash of pale gold, streaked with clouds the color of ash. Maria Torres stood behind the counter of Rosie's Diner, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Her fingers still bore the bruises from the night before, and her ribs ached with every breath. But she had insisted on opening the diner herself. Pain didn't get to win. Fear didn't get to win. She flipped the window sign to open, her breath fogging the glass slightly. A soft drizzle kissed the street outside. For a moment, Maria thought she saw movement down the block, the silhouette of someone pacing. Then she blinked and they were gone. The diner was empty save for Harold, already at his usual stool, hands folded over the sports section of the Post Bulletin. He looked up and gave her a nod, his eyes scanning her face for something he didn't ask aloud. Maria offered a small smile in return. But then, the bell above the door jingled. And again, and again. By 6:15 a.m., Rosie's diner was full. Maria looked up in surprise as the first wave of customers poured in. But they weren't the regulars. They weren't the suits or the students, the truckers or the early morning moms. They were Marines. At least 20 of them filed in, one after another. Some were in dress uniforms, their shoes polished to a mirror sheen. Others wore service jackets, insignias catching the light. And all of them bore the same expression, quiet resolve. Leading them was Hawk. He stood tall in his dark green overcoat, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Clara Evans carried a folded flag. Marcus Lee followed with a framed photo, a picture of Maria from Fallujah, smoke in the background, her arms around an injured Marine as she pulled him to safety. Maria stepped out from behind the counter. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hawk stepped forward. He cleared his throat. His eyes were glistening, but his voice remained steady. "It's called gratitude." He turned slightly and raised his voice. "This woman," he said to the diner, now filled with silence, "dragged me out of a burning Humvee in 2007. I had shrapnel in my legs. She'd been hit, too. Her face was bleeding, her hands were shaking, but she pulled me out, and she kept going." He looked at Maria. "I never got to say thank you. Until now." One by one, the Marines stepped forward. Some hugged her. Some placed patches on the counter. Unit patches, embroidered badges from battles fought across oceans. One laid down a medal. Another, an envelope filled with handwritten letters from soldiers she had treated. Clara handed her the folded flag. "From the field hospital where you served. They retired it the day you left. We thought you should have it." Marcus held up the framed photo. "You probably don't even remember this day. But I do. You saved me. Twice." Maria was shaking. Her eyes blurred with tears she couldn't blink away. She held the flag to her chest, the fabric still carrying the faint scent of sand and iodine and war. "Why now?" she whispered. Hawk smiled gently. "Because someone tried to make you feel small. And we're here to remind you that you are anything but." The story didn't stay within the diner walls for long. A teenager named Riley, who had been sitting at the counter with his dad, pulled out his phone and started recording the moment the Marines entered. He captured Hawk's speech, Clara handing over the flag, Maria breaking down in tears. Within an hour, the clip was online. By lunchtime, it had over 1 million views. The headline read, "Marines line up to thank scarred waitress who saved their lives." The footage was raw, unfiltered, and profoundly human. And it hit a nerve. Comment sections flooded with messages of support. Hashtags trended. Hashtag thank you Maria. Hashtag Semper Fi Waitress. Hashtag Hero Among Us. Local news stations arrived by noon. By 3 p.m., national outlets were calling. Rosie's diner became the eye of a storm of compassion. But Maria never left the counter. She kept serving coffee, refilling cups, wiping down menus. When asked for a comment, she simply said, "I was doing my job." That night, Hawk sat with her after closing. The windows were dark again. The neon sign buzzed quietly. "They'll keep coming," he said. "You've started something." Maria was silent for a long time. Then, she asked, "Why did it take them so long?" Hawk looked down at his hands. "Because people forget, until someone reminds them. And you did, Maria. You reminded them." She looked at the pile of patches, medals, and letters that now adorned the diner's counter like a shrine. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel ashamed of her scars. She felt proud. By the time the morning rush faded at Rosie's diner, Maria Torres had already served dozens of customers, refilled countless cups of coffee, and politely smiled through small talk. But this day, everything felt different. The presence of over 24 Marines had not gone unnoticed. Customers lingered longer than usual, whispering in hushed tones as they watched the camaraderie unfold. Local reporters had arrived mid-morning, tipped off by a now-viral video shared on social media that showed a line of Marines standing solemnly outside the diner. Maria, reluctant to draw attention, had done her best to focus on her work, but it was clear this wasn't just another Tuesday. Harold, as always, had claimed his usual stool at the counter. He stirred his coffee slowly, watching the scene with a quiet pride. Beside him, a younger man in a Rochester Post bulletin jacket tapped notes into a tablet. "You knew her before all this?" the reporter asked. "Sure did," Harold replied. "She served me my eggs every morning for the past 4 years. Never once complained, even when her hands hurt so bad she could barely grip the pot. She's tougher than half the men I served with in Nam." Maria overheard, her cheeks reddening slightly. She dropped off a plate of blueberry pancakes at the next booth and offered a grateful smile to a young mother with 2 kids who had asked about the Marines. "They're my old unit," Maria explained. "They just came to say hi." But the community wanted more than just an explanation. They wanted to understand how a quiet waitress with burned scars had brought together battle-hardened veterans and softened the hearts of an entire town. That evening, Maria returned to her small apartment. As she pulled her boots off and collapsed onto the couch, her phone vibrated. Another message from Clara. "Can you make it to City Hall tomorrow? 10 a.m. It's important." Maria hesitated. City Hall? She had no idea what this was about. Her instincts told her to politely decline. But something in Clara's message, the urgency, the respect, compelled her to say yes. The next morning, Maria stood on the steps of City Hall in her cleanest jeans and a navy blue sweater. Her scars were visible, but she no longer tried to hide them. Hawk stood beside her, looking surprisingly formal in a blazer that clearly hadn't been worn since his discharge ceremony. Clara and Marcus were also present, both in Bravo 17 jackets. Inside, the council chamber was filled with people, residents, veterans, high school students, and local media. Mayor Evelyn Green, a poised woman in her 60s, called the room to order and took the microphone. "Today, we honor one of our own," she said. "Maria Torres served this country in war. She came home with wounds we could see, and many we could not. But what she's given to our town is greater than a medal or a news story. She's given us an example of quiet service, of humility, of strength." Maria felt Hawk gently squeeze her shoulder as the mayor continued. "And so," Mayor Green said, "by unanimous vote of the Rochester City Council, the street adjacent to Rosie's Diner, formerly Elm Street Extension, shall be renamed Torres Lane in honor of Maria Torres." A collective gasp, followed by spontaneous applause, filled the chamber. Maria stared in disbelief. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Clara murmured. Maria stepped forward. Her voice was soft but steady. "I used to think my scars made me invisible, but I see now they made me strong. Thank you for seeing me, for hearing me, and for showing me that I was never alone." The crowd rose to their feet. In the days that followed, the ripple effects continued. A scholarship fund was established in Maria's name for female veterans pursuing nursing degrees. Donations poured in from across the country. Rosie's Diner introduced a pay-it-forward breakfast special. Customers could prepay a meal for someone in need. A bulletin board at the entrance featured notes of encouragement from veterans and civilians alike. One afternoon, a teenage boy who had once snickered at Maria's scars returned with his mother. He approached her table nervously and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you went through." Maria didn't scold. She nodded and said, "Understanding is a good place to start." She meant it. Even local businesses that had once ignored her began reaching out. One beauty salon offered free haircuts to women veterans. A tattoo artist volunteered to cover scar tissue with art if requested, not to erase the past, but to reclaim it. Maria declined. "These scars," she told him gently, "they're mine. They tell a story I'm finally proud to share." On a Saturday afternoon, the Torres Lane sign was officially unveiled. Hundreds gathered, veterans in dress blues, neighbors, families with children, and Rosie's Diner coworkers. Hawk spoke first, retelling the story of Fallujah, the fire, and how Maria had refused to leave without her injured comrades. Then Clara stepped forward. "Maria didn't just patch up our wounds. She gave us hope. And today, She gives that same hope to every woman who thinks she has to hide her pain. When it was Maria's turn, she looked out at the crowd, her voice clear. I thought war was the hardest battle I'd ever face. But learning to love myself after, that was the real fight. And thanks to all of you, I'm winning. Thunderous applause followed as the curtain dropped from the signpost. The new street sign gleamed, Torres Lane. Maria turned to Hawk, who handed her a framed photo, a snapshot of Bravo 17, smiling in the desert sun, with a handwritten note across the top. We never forgot you. She held it close, eyes bright. For the first time in years, she felt not just seen but celebrated. And in that moment, beneath the blue Minnesota sky, Maria Torres's scars no longer felt like wounds. They felt like medals. 3 weeks had passed since Maria Torres stood in front of Rosie's diner, flanked by her former unit, Bravo 17, her scars no longer a subject of ridicule, but a mark of sacrifice honored in full view of a grateful town. What had started as a morning of humiliation had unraveled into a wave of community support, viral news coverage, and personal transformation. The day began with a ribbon-cutting ceremony at the newly renamed Torres Lane, a narrow street that curved behind the diner where Maria had once been attacked. Now, flanked by patriotic bunting and lined with flags, the alley bore a gleaming new sign in bold bronze letters, Torres Lane. It was not just a name, it was a proclamation. Maria stood at the front of the crowd, wearing a navy blue blazer over her uniform shirt. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her face, while still bearing its scars, radiated quiet strength. In her hand was the oversized pair of scissors, gleaming under the morning sun. Beside her stood John Hawkins, Clara Evans, and Marcus Lee, all in matching jackets emblazoned with the Bravo 17 insignia. Also present were Rochester's mayor, several city council members, local veterans groups, students, and a crowd of residents holding signs that read, "Thank you, Maria, heroes don't hide," and simply, "Respect." Mayor Kim addressed the crowd with genuine emotion. When we first heard Maria's story, we were moved. But what came after, the unity, the pride, the accountability, has changed us. We renamed the street not only for Maria's courage on the battlefield, but for her dignity here at home. Maria stepped forward and spoke into the microphone. Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of what this moment meant. For a long time, I thought my scars made me invisible, she said. I tried to disappear behind diner counters and quiet smiles. But you showed me something different. You showed me I was seen. You showed me that service doesn't end with a uniform. It continues in the way we protect each other, lift each other, and honor each other. Then she cut the ribbon, and cheers erupted from the crowd. A brass band began to play, and children released red, white, and blue balloons into the sky. Rosie's diner underwent a transformation of its own. The small eatery, once just a modest corner diner, now carried a framed newspaper article by Isabel Carter titled "Scars and Strength: Maria Torres and the Meaning of Service." A photograph from the viral video, Maria being embraced by Hawk while Clara and Marcus stood behind them, saluting, hung on the wall next to the counter. The diner saw an increase in business, not because of pity, but because people wanted to be part of something that stood for more than just food. The owner, Rosie, donated a portion of the increased revenue to a new scholarship fund, the Maria Torres Veteran Nurses Fund, which supported female veterans pursuing careers in nursing or medicine. High schools across the county invited Maria to speak. She talked not about war, but about resilience. She stood before teenagers who had seen her face online, and instead of hiding behind her past, she walked straight through it, using it to teach empathy and understanding. At one event, a teenage girl in the front row raised her hand. "Did you ever want to hide forever?" she asked. Maria smiled. "Every day. But hiding didn't heal me. Standing in the light, with the people who had my back did." Back at her apartment, Maria received letters from across the country. Veterans, burn survivors, teenage girls with insecurities, elderly women who'd lost sons in war, all thanking her for reminding them that beauty and bravery are not mutually exclusive. Among the letters was one from the mother of one of the young men who had attacked her. It read, MS. Torres, I raised my son better. I failed somewhere, but he has learned from you more than I could ever teach him. He is volunteering now, serving food at shelters, working off his sentence not as punishment, but penance. Thank you for not letting your pain turn to bitterness. Maria folded the letter carefully and added it to a small wooden box she kept on her windowsill. Inside were mementos. The field medic pin Clara had given her, a ribbon from one of the balloons at the Torres Lane ceremony, a napkin with a child's drawing of her holding a coffee pot and wearing a cape. One evening, Maria and Hawk sat on a bench beneath the new Torres Lane sign, sipping coffee from to-go cups. You ever think we'd be back in formation, Hawk said with a laugh, in a parking lot behind a diner in Minnesota? Maria chuckled. I thought I left the battlefield years ago. Turns out, healing is a battle of its own. He nodded, but one worth fighting. Maria looked out at the alley, now bright with painted murals of unity and respect, and watched a group of teens walk by. One of them looked up at the sign and said, She works at Rosie's, right? That lady's a badass. Maria smiled, not at the compliment, but at the simple truth in it. The scars remained, of course. They always would. But so did the strength. So did the dignity. So did the courage that had saved lives on the battlefield and rebuilt them in a quiet Minnesota town. Maria had once thought that her greatest war was in Fallujah, but now she knew better. The hardest battle had been learning to see herself not through the eyes of cruelty or pity, but through the love of those who knew what she was worth. And in that battle, she had not only survived, she had won. The end.